from the Hudson Media Group studio. This is Talking Politics, and I am New Jersey's premier and now 7-time award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, and certainly the weapon of mass disruption here in Garden State Media. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Hoping you have a wonderful end of January, folks. February is right around the corner. There's always a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I've only been probably the single most outspoken critic of the liberal media here in the state of New Jersey. And there's no shortage of bad journalism. And I've articulated that for many, many months, not just on this program, but on other programs in my media brand, whether it's Talking the Hudson via Blog Talk Radio, or of course, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First. And it seems to be sort of like this repetitive cycle about journalists, especially those that lean heavy left, to have just an enormous amount of just lacking self-awareness. And here's just yet another example. Now, let me just preface this by saying that, I've never really had a high opinion of Tom Moran. I read his columns because I like to read everybody in New Jersey, even if I don't like them personally, or much more, even if I don't like them ideologically. But again, as a political junkie and as a political scientist, it certainly is incumbent upon me as an academic and as a journalist to read everything on both sides of the aisle. So yes, I subject myself to reading NJ.com, obviously not the paid site, because why would I give a nickel to NJ.com? Of course, I use a friend's username and password, respectively. Of course, I read other news sites that are free, but of course, I read everything, both that leans right and those that lean left. But here's an issue I think that doesn't really, is comprised of anything having to do political. I think it's more a sociological and maybe even an ideological divide that exists right now. Let me preface this by saying that Amy DeGees, the councilwoman at large in Jersey City, is a friend of mine. She has been a consistent guest on my podcast, Talking the Hudson, once again, which you can listen to on blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson, since July of 2018. Okay, during that summer of 2018, she was elected during a reorg meeting as the chairwoman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization. And every single month throughout her tenure as chairperson of the HDDO, she made a point to come on every single month. And mind you, she got a lot of grief from her handlers, right? Vision Media, which consists of the Zabinskis, both the father and the son, who don't think very highly of me. And let's be honest, I don't think highly of them. All right? Or local progressives or other elected officials that are very tribal about letters and about, labels. I'm someone who is an unapologetic conservative. Yes, I can be reasonable about most social issues. When it comes to economic issues, I'm a staunch and dedicated fiscal conservative. But that didn't stop Amy DeGees from coming on my program every single month to talk about not just what was going on within the HDDO, but also within Jersey City. And regardless of that, guess what? Amy always came on, never dodged a question, and always answered honestly. And we always had an excellent rapport and thus excellent dialogue and excellent episodes. But what was interesting, though, about this entire scenario with Amy is that you know what I'm getting to. So in the summer of 2022, certainly on that fateful July morning, yes, we know that obviously Amy DeGees, by her own admission, made an error in judgment. Okay? Amy DeGees, as we all know, obviously from the transcripts last week during her court proceedings in Essex County, obviously with her attorney Brian Neary at her side, made a very clear distinction about what happened that fateful July morning. Now, again, I'm her friend. I'm not going to pile on her like so many others did, whether it was journalists like Tom Moran, David Cruz, Jay Lassiter. Take your pick, folks. There was no shortage of the usual clowns in New Jersey media that had to just, hey, you know what? They had to opine and give their 2 cents about Amy DeGees. I chose not to. Now, some people might say, well, Fernando, you're lacking objectivity. Well, maybe I am. But here's sort of a humanistic, real-world scenario. I don't pile on friends. We all make mistakes. I know I am certainly not free of flaws, okay? But the mistake Amy made, obviously, and she's owned up to it. She has shown contrition. She has apologized for it. Now, certainly, that's not going to satisfy everybody. It's certainly not going to satisfy some local elected officials. It's not going to satisfy the insufferable bicyclist organizations in Jersey City and even statewide who've made, again, no bones about going to council meetings and offering their 2 cents during the public portion of the meetings. Okay? Now, again, I have chosen not to pile on Amy. I'm hoping to be that one guy that gets the exclusive with Amy DeGees. We'll see. All right? I know that her media appearances are very selective right now. We'll see if she appears on, whether it's on my podcast, which she's been a regular guest on, or on my Real Talk show with Jersey First. But regardless of that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move on from what happened with Amy DeGise. Yes, it's tragic. Fortunately, the bicyclist was not harmed. Yes, he suffered, I believe, a sprained ankle or some, I don't know, not a fracture, but maybe a sprain of some kind. Regardless of the fact, he seems to be in good physical health, as Amy's attorney, Brian Neary, articulated last week during the court proceedings. Again, that's not going to stop him from suing Amy and the city collectively, but we'll find out where that goes at the proper time. But it seems that whether it was David Cruz last summer and fall or Jay Lassiter from Insider NJ, now it's Tom Moran with NJ.com and, of course, via the Star Ledger. And you want to talk about an absolutely irresponsible title for a column, which, again, this is what we've come to know about Tommy, okay? But this one, I would argue, really takes the cake. And he titles his latest column as, "Was Amy DeGise drunk when she hit that bicyclist in Jersey City?" So let me just give you a little context here, okay? So he starts off the column by saying, "I'm new to living in Hudson County," which I think I speak for many of us here. We're certainly not happy you're anywhere near us, Tom. But anyway, I must say I'm impressed by the well-greased machine of sleaze they have built here in Jersey City after attending my first meeting of the city council last week. It came one day after Councilwoman Amy DeGise, part of the royal family here, was found guilty of smashing her SUV into a bicyclist who had passed a red light in July, sending him careening off her windshield and flipping through the air and fleeing the scene. Folks, I'm not trying to sound mean, but if you watch the video, it was kind of funny. But that's just me because I like messed up humor like that. Okay? But the video shows that she didn't even tap the brakes to see if the guy was bleeding from his ears. She sped away while he was still on the ground. Well, that's not true. He got up pretty quickly and walked it off. Now, again, DeGise waited 6 hours before showing up at police headquarters. Now, again, according to reports, they had a recording of the crash and saw her license plate, so they already knew it was her. But they didn't go get her during those hours, nor did they conduct any kind of sobriety test. According to the mayor, Stephen Fulop, and the office there, said that is indeed standard procedure, and that reflects no favoritism at all. Of course, Tommy, with his usual condescending, during a column. Kevin Bing, again, not to be confused with Chandler Bing from Friends, who has a hell of a lot more charisma than Kevin Bing collectively, goes on to say, quote, "That's the number one speculation. An activist who's gathered petitions on the street and attended Wednesday's meeting. Were there drugs or alcohol in her system?" I mean, Kevin, really, listen, that's never been reported. That was never intimated. She's denied it flatly. Obviously, if that was the case, folks, listen, we live in a world where even if 6 hours passed, okay, if she went to the police station, they would have seen something on her, okay? Take it from me and other motorists that have had interactions with police at checkpoints, and again, whether it's been X amount of hours, whether or not there's anything in her system. And again, I've spoken to Amy. She has flatly denied having anything in her system, not even caffeine that morning. So can we stop with the conjecture? But again, let me get back to this wonderful piece of just awful journalism here. I'm not saying that the woman was intoxicated, mind you, but you are if you're asking. She denies that, and there's no evidence of drugs or alcohol, which is the point. If a drunk driver flees the scene and then waits 6 hours, the liver and kidneys do their work destroying the evidence. And when police sit on their hands and let that happen, no one's the wiser. It's such ego and hubris, according to Megan Carolan, who started an online petition asking Amy to step down. Many people who signed the petition said that if this happened to them, they'd be in handcuffs, okay? Tom goes on to say, "This is the ugly side of machine politics. DeGise and her allies know the local machines control enough votes to protect them. She knows that she doesn't have to answer these basic questions, and not from the 7,500 people who signed Carolan's petition, not from the demonstrators who are gearing up for yet another, amount of protest next week," which, folks, by the way, that's just nonsense. I've gone to 2 council meetings, again, shortly after the incident in July of 2022, and the streets were not closed down. Okay, David Cruz made it seem like there was like a tsunami of people. No, there wasn't. All right, it's just more and more nonsense being fabricated by these local ideologues and activists, really, and certainly not from pesky journalists. Of course, it goes on to say here that, and really I think the ending is very interesting here. The only happy twist in this story is that the bicyclist Andrew Black miraculously bounced up after his acrobatic flight with only minor injuries, and that DeGise only lost her license for a year and must pay a fine of $5,000. He's taking initial steps to sue the city. Here's hoping that he wins. Well, again, that's just Tom being, sanctimonious and just, snide. But this is the same Tom Moran, folks. Again, and this is what's funny about Tom and other journalists like David Cruz and Jay Lassiter, who sit on this sort of pedestal, or this self-imposed pedestal, and sit on this sort of moral high horse, right, with this sort of level of moral superiority when they don't have any. And the reason I bring that up is because, again, thanks to our good friend David Wallstein, the editor and publisher of the New Jersey Globe, Very interesting article he published in April of 2021 talking about an opinion he wrote about he's not afraid of Tom Moran, despite the fact that Tom Moran is a bully, which he is. All right. Now, what's interesting, though, is that David Wallstein articulates a bad error in judgment by Tom Moran. All right. So, of course, he goes on to say Tom Moran, who apparently got into a little bit of altercation with Hudson County Prosecutor Esther Suarez back during the spring of 2021, indicates that, hey, you know what? The New Jersey Globe's coverage of the incident with Tom Moran at the Liberty House was indeed appropriate, contrary to what Tom Moran would lead you to believe. David Wallstein used only on-the-record statements from law enforcement incidents filed at the time and comments from the prosecutor's office, the governor's office, the former acting U.S. Marshal, and from Moran and his bosses. No opinions and no judgments, just both sides of the story. Now, would the Star-Ledger have been just as even-handed on reporting on something like this if it wasn't Tom Moran? Spoiler alert, folks, they wouldn't have been, okay? And this is where we get to. This sort of sanctimony about Tom Moran. You know, hey, whatever's good for you isn't good for him. Now, I understand, folks, that there's a lot of anger against Amy DeGise, and Amy's going to have a lot to say whenever she says it, whether it's to me, hopefully, or other journalists that are looking to get that exclusive interview with her for her to sort of talk about what happened last July. Again, now she's free to do that. Her attorney, Brian Neary, has explained the facts. We know what happened. She's shown contrition. And now, you know what? From this point on, Amy is only looking to rebuild her image with the community and continue her term on the city council. Now, that's not good enough for Tom Moran. That's not good enough for David Cruz. That's not good enough for Jay Lasher and the rest of the clowns in New Jersey media that seem to always keep piling on Amy. Again, we'll find out. Amy knows the truth. Amy seems to be willing to discuss the truth and talk about her side of the issues. That'll come soon enough. But folks, Tom Moran is just another symptom of a bigger problem. It's journalists that like to be sanctimonious, like to sit on their moral high horses when they don't have a leg to stand on morally. Okay? Now, I might come across as having this sort of level of moral superiority, but folks, here's a spoiler alert. I do. I can be morally superior to the aforementioned gentleman because I conduct myself that way. The others don't. And we've seen it, whether it's on segments, articles, or social media. Take your pick, folks. Jay Lasseter, David Cruz, Tom Moran, Kevin Bing, James Solomon, okay, others within this ecosystem of Hudson County politics that have felt the need to opine about what happened last July. Folks, I'll say it for the record. I don't care for bicyclists. I don't like them. They're a nuisance. They're an inconvenience, along with now a new demographic of electric scooter riders who also are becoming a nuisance to motorists like me. Does Mr. Black deserve what happened to him? Of course not. But again, had he been paying attention and seeing that he had a red light, he probably wouldn't have got himself into trouble. But again, that's the least of the issue here, folks. The issue is that columnists like Tom Moran and other journalists seem to be more superior to all of us when, quite frankly, they're the furthest thing from it. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, some local stories for your consideration. And let's start off with the Hudson County View. And certainly thank you to John Hines for his report on this story. Now, I was in attendance last Friday night at the Great Cliff in Moonhockey, somewhere in central Bergen County, for what was quite the festive occasion to, I guess, officially announce the ticket for former U.S. Representative Albio Series as he seeks to be West New York's mayor once again. Now, leading the charge and batting leadoff during this event was the senior U.S. Senator, Robert Menendez, again, who was a colleague of Albio Series in Washington, D.C. for many, many years. Senator Menendez went on to say during the festivities, quote, he has been West New York, is West New York, and will be West New York once after this election. Few people who run for local office can have the breadth and scope of experience that Albio has to return to the office of mayor. From his relationships when he was a Speaker of the New Jersey State Assembly, one of the highest positions you can obtain in the state, to his relationships in Washington in the House of Representatives, where he just brought back a record number of dollars for the township of West New York. Now, HCDO Chairman Anthony Veneri said that the party was 100% behind the Albio Series slate, which consisted, of course, of current Commissioner Victor Barrera, Board of Education President Adam Parkinson, as well as others that, quite frankly, comprise a very, very extensive and very diverse ticket. Also in attendance was Hudson County Executive Tom DeGise, who again will not be running for re-election, will be finishing his term, and will be succeeded by Craig Guy. In addition to that, State Senator and Union City Mayor Brian Stack was also in attendance, and I have to say Brian was probably the most fiery of all the elected officials there in attendance, really urging everyone there. And folks, I have to tell you, counts were somewhere between 600 and 800. I counted at least 1,000 people in the Great Cliff last Friday night. I mean, it was a packed house. I mean, maybe the open bar has something to do with it and the great buffet, but folks, make no mistake about it. People paid their money to go last Friday night. And listen, if we're talking about 1,000 people at $500 a ticket, well, maybe not all 1,000 people paid, but even if you get 800 people, folks, that's $40,000. That's a pretty good war chest going into May 9th for Albio Series and his ticket. But again, whether it was Brian Stack, whether it was obviously other elected officials, which was interesting though, ladies and gentlemen, obviously also in attendance was Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis, County Sheriff Frank Scolari, County Commissioners Bill O'Day, Anthony Romano, Fanny Cedeno, and Caridad Rodriguez. Of course, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala was in attendance along with Kearney Mayor Al Santos. Certainly, the master of ceremonies was the very energetic and charismatic Weehawken Mayor Richard Turner, a big fan of my media brand, by the way, along with the current West New York Mayor and future Assemblyman Gabriel Rodriguez, again, in what will be the new reconstructed 33rd Legislative District. Of course, Jersey City Council President Joyce Waterman, along with council people Yusuf Saleh and Amy DeGees, were also in attendance. Even Hudson County Republican Chair Jose Arango wanted to partake in the festivities because, again, it's sort of a non-partisan municipal election. But again, like anything else, folks, it gets very tribal. So now with his candidacy official, it has become indeed a three-way dance between former Mayor Felix Roque, current Commissioner of Recreation Cosmo Cirillo, and of course, former U.S. Representative and former Mayor himself, Albio Series. Now, to the best of my knowledge, Mayor Roque has not yet completed his ticket, but I'm sure it'll be completed within the next few weeks. Again, March 6th, folks, if I'm not mistaken, is the filing deadline for petitions if you look to be on the May 9th ballot. Now, arguably, folks, we're talking about 15 candidates, and as I've said before, this is a very interesting election because we have not seen a split ticket in West New York since, I believe, the 1950s. Don't quote me on that, but I try to be right on all my facts. And whether it was attending the event last Friday at the Great Cliff, or attending Cosmo Cirillo's event at Las Palmas even the night before, or even Felix Roque's event at Las Palmas the Thursday prior. It was very energetic. Certainly, folks, a very, very diverse group of people, and at the same time, a bit of a discrepancy in terms of numbers. I counted somewhere between 75 to 80 people at the Felix Roque event. I counted somewhere between 250 to 275 people at the Cosmo Cirillo event, and certainly, folks, I easily counted 1,000 people last Friday at the Great Cliff. Now, does that translate into votes? We'll find out. Again, everyone on social media seems to have an opinion, whether it's groups on Facebook, whether it's pages on Instagram or on Twitter or even TikTok, as well as Snapchat. It's going to be a very interesting race, ladies and gentlemen. In my hometown, again, and I was born and raised in West New York, I'm a proud Tiger. I keep wearing my Memorial High School merch, which still fits me, ironically, right? So I must have some good genes somewhere. Thanks, Mom and Dad, okay, for that. But West New York, folks, is going to be arguably in the center of the political microscope for the next few months. It's being written about on almost every major political news site in the state of New Jersey, and it's certainly being reported on online shows such as this and others that we all get to see on a weekly basis. But folks, make no mistake about it. It's a very, very tight race, and I think it's all going to come down to turnout, as we all know. It's going to come down to name recognition, and thus far, the race has been very civil. It's not gotten chippy. It's not gotten fickle. There's no personal attacks as of yet, per se. I mean, there's little jabs that you make at campaigns, but nothing vicious. Like, if we remember, folks, during the spring of 2011, folks, just go on YouTube and check out the content from Hudson County TV during that time period. I mean, it was feisty on Bergen Avenue. We're talking about people literally getting each other's faces. If there was ever a time that West New York police officers, and they always earn their paychecks, folks, because they're one of the hardest working departments anywhere in Hudson County, if not the state of New Jersey, they certainly earned it that afternoon, having to separate physically tons of people that were marching on Bergen Avenue between then candidate Sal Vega and challenger Felix Roque. I don't know if it'll get that feisty. Again, I'm a big WWE fan. I love pro wrestling. I love the spectacle and the hoopla and the pandemonium and the chaos. I don't know if that's going to happen now in 2023, but make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, at some point, someone's going to throw the first punch. Someone's going to draw first blood. You just have to. Albio Series has the backing of the Hudson County Democratic Organization. Again, one of the more powerful political machines, not the devices, but the apparatuses along voting lines anywhere in the state of New Jersey. We'll find out, folks, where this race takes us. I'll certainly be talking to all the candidates in the weeks and months ahead, whether it be on my podcast, Talking to Hudson via Blog Talk Radio, whether it be even highlights here with the Hudson Media Group, or even with Real Talk via Jersey First. Folks, again, there's no shortage of guests to talk to. There's no shortage of topics to discuss as we lead up to May 9th. And trust me, folks, it's going to get interesting in the town of West New York. Let's stay in West New York, and a special thank you to Julio Reynoso with Hudson TV for his report on this very disturbing story. All right, West New York man faces aggravated sexual assault charges and a conspiracy in connection to horrific crimes involving, and it just pains me to even say this out loud, a 4-year-old girl. Now, the Hudson County Prosecutor's Office has filed additional and even more serious charges against Joseph Suarez, a 31-year-old resident of the township of West New York. Now, the charges stem from an ongoing investigation into sexual crimes involving, I can't even say this, it just pains me to say it, a 4-year-old girl. Now, the investigation conducted by the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force revealed that Suarez was communicating with a 13-year-old boy outside of New Jersey and instructing him to produce and share images and videos of himself sexually assaulting the young girl. The investigation led to the seizure of over 1,000 files of child sex abuse materials from Suarez's residence. Folks, if this is something you would think you would see on Law & Order Special Victims Unit, even that probably wouldn't even be His Highness, but it really is. This development is just the latest chapter in the ongoing investigation into Suarez's criminal activities. On January 18th, he was initially arrested and charged with endangering the welfare of a child, facilitating child sex abuse materials, distribution of child sex abuse material, and possession of child sexual abuse material. The state filed a detention motion in the case. Now, Suarez has been charged with aggravated sexual assault and conspiracy to commit aggravated sexual assault. These charges carry severe consequences and jail time, and the prosecution will work to ensure that justice is indeed served. Now, the prosecutor's office has indeed praised the efforts of various units and agencies that work together to bring Suarez to justice, including, once again, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, the Special Victims Unit, In-Court Unit, Narcotics Task Force, Cyber Crimes Unit, Crime Scene Unit, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, and ultimately the West New York Police Department. Public is reminded that the above charges are merely accusations, and the defendant is indeed considered innocent until proven guilty. However, these allegations are extremely serious and have shocked the community overall. The Hudson County Prosecutor's Office is dedicated to bringing perpetrators of these heinous crimes to justice and ensuring the safety of all the children in our community. Folks, I can't even begin to tell you how heinous this sounds. And as someone who has been watching Law & Order Special Victims Unit, even the new spin-off, Law & Order Organized Crime, which, by the way, is just outstanding television, folks, I can't recall even watching 20-something years of SVU to hear something this heinous. And again, we know that pedophilia is still a serious societal problem. It is still a serious problem within all our communities, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. Folks, this really hits home here, to think that someone this close to us in West New York could just engage in such heinous behavior, and quite frankly is just a sick person. Again, as the article mentioned, yes, we do have the presumption of innocence. All people are indeed innocent until proven guilty. But folks, let me just tell you, from having worked in our criminal justice system for 10 years before entering academia and journalism collectively, trust me, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's the FBI, the prosecutor's office, or even a cyber crimes unit, again, which is pretty much assigned to the FBI, they don't just go after you for no reason. They watch you, they monitor your IP addresses, they monitor your computer, they monitor your phone. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, for anyone that's even interested in doing something like this, I urge you right now, don't. It's sick, it's heinous, it's just a depravity of anything that's decent in our society to even see this. The fact that there are men and women that still engage in this sort of pornography, in this just behavior of wanting to commit sexual abuse against children. Folks, there's no place for people like that. And again, I don't want to get on a high horse here about capital punishment and who deserves it, but folks, for anyone that abuses children, for anyone that sexually abuses children, for anyone that endangers children to this manner, I hate to tell you, folks, if this guy's found guilty, there's no reason why he shouldn't see a needle, firing squad, electric chair, or anything like that. I know we did away with capital punishment in 2008 under then Governor John Corzine, one of his more brilliant moves, obviously under Johnny Dollar's administration back then. And certainly the legislature went along with it, with introducing that bill and having the governor sign it. But trust me, folks, again, everyone's innocent until proven guilty. But if anyone deserves capital punishment, it's people like this individual, if indeed they're found guilty. Okay, just like others that, again, commit heinous acts against our children each and every day. Folks, the problem is a lot more pervasive than you think. Trust me, these units exist for a reason, because the problem is still a very big one, not just in Hudson County, not just in New Jersey, throughout the country, and also throughout the world. Lastly, a story by Tapping New Jersey City, and great work by Steve Lennox there, obviously, and his reporters. Now, a New Jersey man was sentenced to 6 years for assaulting a police officer during the recent January 6th riots that happened at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Now, Julian Cater, 33-year-old male out of Somerset County, who had been in custody since March 14th of 2021, pled guilty in September of 2022 to 2 counts of assaulting, resisting, and impeding officers with a dangerous weapon, according to the Department of Justice. In addition to prison, Cater was also ordered restitution of $2,000, a fine of $10,000, and ordered 36 months of supervised release. Cater was sentenced along with his accomplice George Stainos, age 33, from Virginia, and he was also sentenced to time served. Now, Cater and Stainos attended the Stop the Steal rally outside the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Now, prior to attending the rally, Cater and Stainos had purchased 2 canisters of bear spray and pepper spray collectively. As the crowd became violent during that morning and approached the Capitol building, Cater sprayed Officer Sicknick in the face with pepper spray, and at least 2 other Capitol police officers were sprayed by Cater, according to the DOJ. Now, a medical examiner determined that the cause of Sicknick's death was from natural causes after he suffered multiple strokes. A doctor who examined Sicknick told the Washington Post that, quote, all that transpired played a role in his condition. Officer Sicknick is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Arlington, Virginia. Since the Capitol riots in January 6, 2021, more than 950 individuals have been arrested in nearly all 50 states. Over 284 individuals have been charged with assaulting or impeding law enforcement, according to the Department of Justice. Folks, listen, I've talked about this at length before, and I'll say it again. I certainly was not a fan of what happened on January 6th. I certainly did not. Listen, you can assemble, you can object to some of the chicanery that went on during the election of 2020, which we all know is evident, folks. Again, I'm not an election denier, but folks, I know what my eyes tell me. Okay. Now, again, people went to attend. I know plenty of people that went to January 6th and attended the rally that, again, former President Donald Trump spoke at, where, again, at no point in time, whether it was on his Twitter or anything in his speech, did he advocate for violence or encourage anyone to commit property damage to the Capitol buildings. Let's make that clear. Again, some people took it too far. Hey, that's unfortunate, and certainly it cost the life of a Capitol police officer. And certainly these individuals will get their time in prison, and rightfully so, folks. Again, you can go and protest that Joe Biden's an awful president, or that he didn't deserve to win, or that there was some chicanery during the election process. You can go and dispute all that stuff. You can go protest. You can go scream at the top of your lungs. Don't do what BLM protesters did for an entirety of 5 to 6 months during the summer of 2020, destroying police stations, destroying police cars, destroying public and private property. Okay, that's what happened. Did one single person from the BLM riots in that summer of love face one day in court or one day of justice? Of course not. But again, I've talked about that in other shows. Again, folks, justice was served here. Hopefully he'll learn his lesson, and hopefully Mr. Cater will go on to be a productive citizen after he finishes his custodial sentence. But for now, he'll be in jail for quite some time. Now, folks, that's our episode for this week here. As always, check out all of the wonderful content brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, by going to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, as well as www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to click the subscribe button on the Hudson Media Group YouTube page. Make sure you like them on Facebook, and of course, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Check out my own media brand as well, folks, the 7-time award-winning podcast, Talkin' Hudson, which will resume with new episodes in the month of February by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/TalkinHudson. Recent episodes are there, which include, obviously, conversations with Councilwoman Mira Prince-Array, as well as Tap Into Jersey City columnist and the Dean of Hudson County Journalism, Al Sullivan. Of course, all episodes are there. You can download them and listen to them anywhere you get your podcasts. Of course, take them on your way to the gym, wherever it is you listen during the course of your productive day. Of course, make sure you like Talking Politics on Facebook, ladies and gentlemen. Follow it on Instagram, as well as follow my own Instagram and Twitter at the Fernando Zone. And of course, make sure you like Fernando Uribe on Facebook as well. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier and now 7-time award-winning journalist, top 100 Latino, via the Latino Spirit online magazine, and certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying, folks, have a great rest of your week. And as always, thank you so much for watching.